Hey everybody, this is Andy, aka Love Retro BTW, across Twitter, Instagram, and Twitch. I do a podcast every Saturday called Cafe BTW, a morning gaming podcast, a retrospective look at the wonderful world of retro gaming, from interviews to guests. Join us every Saturday, like a Saturday morning cartoon, starting at 8 a.m., 11 a.m. Eastern. Also, if you're on Twitter, please join the brand new retro gaming community, a place to share, connect, and show your love for the retro gaming community. All the links are down below. And remember, enjoy the Gamers Week podcast.
This time on Gamers Week podcast. I get it though. Like Peach it's just so wholesome, right? You know.
But Peach is always running off to another castle. It's
true. So maybe this Peach is Walu Peach is a homebody. She never leaves.
I thought you were getting ready to say.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say something else. She's a homebody.
Homebody.
All right, you guys ready for this?
Let's do it.
Y'all ready for this?
Peter Griffin does jock jams.
Gonna make you sweat, baby. Let the rhythm take control. Let the rhythm move you.
Can you do the Mortal Kombat song? It's Peter Griffin like, Mortal Kombat.
Mortal Kombat.
Yes, perfect.
I hope you put this skill on your resume.
Voiceover artist, yes.
Or just can recite anything as Peter Griffin.
There's an office somewhere that's like, yes, we need this guy. Mm-hmm. Sir, he's not qualified. I don't care.
Get him in here. Offer him whatever you have to.
All right, so let's do this.
Let's do this.
Welcome to Gamers Week podcast. Like the name says, we analyze the best, worst, and weirdest headlines of the past week in the video game industry. This is episode 56. Today is Wednesday, January 18th, 2023. I am Ryan, aka Retro Game Brews, aka Professor Ryebread, aka that guy that looks a lot like Fabio, and I will be your host for this evening. I don't want to hear it. I haven't introduced you yet, so you can't talk. But I have with me two lying SOBs. First up is a man whose idea of a good tattoo is a surf and turf erotica tramp stamp. Donnie G Retro. Donnie, how you doing?
I can't. To train like the dolphin, you must be thinking like the dolphin. You must be getting inside the dolphin's head and communicating. Exactly. Where the buffalo roam.
Surf and turf erotica is now a genre that must exist.
Must exist. And I also have a woman with me who doesn't get the reference. Did I do that? Anybody got any cheese? And I'm wearing you down, Laura. I'm wearing you down. Blue Williams. Blue, how you doing tonight?
No, I get the reference. Trust me, because
damn it.
nerds have been quoting it for decades and thinking they're really, really clever.
Steve Urkel has infiltrated your life, even though you haven't watched Family Matters.
Yeah, I was happier before I knew about this.
Oh, he's in there, baby. He's in there.
All right, so why don't we go ahead and jump into our reviews, reactions, and requests. And first up from Kuna Plays that says, are you only on Spotify? Can I listen somewhere else? Yes, you can listen pretty much anywhere you listen to podcasts. We put the link for Spotify when we do our tweets, just because that seems to be the most popular app that's out there that can also be accessed, not just from an Apple device. So, but yes, you can listen to us anywhere. So do it. Do it, dog. Next up from Nate says, glad to participate in the VIP. I actually remembered to get my answer in on time, and I usually remember midweek, and I failed Nate because I told him I was going to tag him on this week's, and I didn't. So, yeah, sorry, Nate. My bad. And last up from G Plant says, Gamers Week is really making this -9-degree morning worth it. Best part of the day. Awesome. Thank you.
We really warm you up in more ways than one.
So I was turning over a similar joke in my head and decided not to go with it.
Because blue is classy.
Right. Just like this show.
Right. And now it's time for the
Oh yeah, baby. Very important. Oh, baby.
Can you do the rest of it in that voice?
Sure.
Do it.
Every Monday on Twitter, we post our VIP, very important poll. If you'd like to participate, follow us on Twitter at GamersWeekPC. Now, the question for this week was, in your opinion, who is the best Final Fantasy protagonist? Coming in third place is Titus from Final Fantasy X with 18%. Number 2 is Cecil, or however you want to say it, from Final Fantasy IV at 23.7%. And taking the top spot this week, your choice, you love her, Terra from Final Fantasy
Say it.
3.
I knew it. I know.
30.8%. Now, 27.5% of you said other, so let's take a look at some of the comments from the poll.
At Kid Palais says, I do like lightning.
That was jarring.
Yeah, the difference, right?
I wasn't just kind of got used to the other voice, and it's like, oh,
Right.
okay.
I wonder if it's going to jar everybody else too.
Probably everybody. Let's all take a collective moment and gather ourselves.
It's like, oh, where was I? Oh my God, why are my clothes off?
That always happens when people listen to Gamers Week.
Everybody's like, did they have Michael Dorn on Gamers Week this week?
At Kid Palais says, I do like lightning. She's kicking the almighties like nobody else. At Severing Faith says, Zidane, always and forever. At Ali J. Shannon says, Zach Fair. However, Cecil is a good shout, but I think I'd take Cloud Strife for second place. At Puzzle Better says, my girl White Mage was the bomb, and no one can tell me any different. Admittedly, all of my headcanon for her comes from a webcomic from my college years called 8-Bit Theater that no one has ever heard of. And at Beamstalk says, we all know the true answer is Sid. The one, the only
There
Sid.
isn't one and only.
Oh, there's multiple. It's like a virus.
Every generation, this Sid is reborn.
So, based on the question for this week, Ryan, where did you come up with your favorite protagonist?
Well, apparently I really messed up on this one by not putting Zidane in there.
Yeah, why didn't you put Zidane in there? Hey, haven't you heard of Zidane?
That was 90% of the comments was, how dare you? But Zidane's great. Don't get me wrong. I love Final Fantasy IX. And as far as the choices are concerned, Terra's huge for me. I've always been a big fan of her story arc. I think it's really cool, her transition through everything. But for me, my choice is going to be Vivi from Final Fantasy IX. I like Vivi because he's the kind of person that questions himself, and there's this, character progression as you go through it, and he's got this tragic story and everything, and trying to avoid spoilers with that. But also, by not having like an actual face, there's a part of that leads to some mystery behind him, right? So being a black mage, it makes it interesting. But I think Vivi is probably my favorite out of the protagonists from the Final Fantasy series.
But you asked for who is the best.
And in my opinion, because my opinions are always right, my favorite and the best are Vivi.
Okay.
Oh, there you go. Blue, what about you? What was your choice this week?
So I went with a hot take on this one. If you ask me, the protagonist of Final Fantasy X is not actually Titus. And yes, all you actually people, I know it's technically pronounced Titus, and I don't care because that sounds stupid.
Sounds tedious.
The protagonist of Final Fantasy X is not actually Titus, it's Yuna. Titus is really not much of a character. He is essentially an audience surrogate where he is taken from his world, dropped in this new world, and it's through Titus's eyes that the players essentially get their information about the world around them, where people explain the backstory to them, explain what's going on, explain what is significant about this or that. And he just kind of flows along with the story and doesn't actually do much. The protagonist of Final Fantasy X is actually Yuna, who is on the classic hero's journey, where she has to go and strengthen herself and gather allies to go face the final big bad, this overwhelming evil. And the way she does it, the way she grows throughout the game, that's what makes her the true protagonist of Final Fantasy X.
Interesting. I didn't really ever think about that from that viewpoint.
Well, now you will. So what about you, Donnie?
I don't. That's the thing. I've played the original Final Fantasy. I've played Final Fantasy 2. I've played Final Fantasy 3 and 7 and a little bit of 8. And about 8 is where I was like, you know what? I was so attached to part 7 that I couldn't get really into 8. And then 9 came out. It kind of went back to its roots with the little, with the way the characters were designed. And then 10 came out and I was like, oh, yay, 10 looks good. Blitzball. What the hell is this?
Yeah,
and
right.
then after that, I've never touched another Final Fantasy game again. So I can't really provide an in-depth analysis to who my favorite character is because of this reason or that reason or whatever. I'd say just for the sheer badassness of how Cloud started out in Final Fantasy VII, that's going to be my pick.
So before you knew that he was a character stealing punk, you really liked the guy.
I did.
All right. So why don't we go ahead and shout out our patrons for the week?
We couldn't do what we do without the help of our gorgeous patrons. Here are the generous folks supporting Gamers Week on Patreon. Steven Sand, Ramboski, Terry Kinnair, Ducks in Disguise, Jim and Colleen, Games with Coffee, Hybrid Divide, You Fall Before Me, Davey PGH, The Red Ox, PDX Family, including Shannon and Luke, Zach Huge Thanks, Rerun Gamer, Number One, Blue Sick Voice Fan, Random Retro Dude, Princess Kitty Mew Mew, Rai Rai's Secret Best Friend, Mega Retro Man, Gamatroid, Emo-esque, Bill Tucker, Ryebread's number one fan, Fruitcake's number one stan, Ducks with Thick Thighs, The Wizard of Zardoz, Clayman 71, Great Siaman 81, BNT Zillaguy, Geek With That, Crunchy Comb, Sheriff Snacks, Frank Grande, JNL Game, and Love Retro BTW. If you like what you heard today, and we really hope you do, please consider joining us on Patreon. Your support helps cover the cost of producing the show, as well as other cool stuff we'll be doing like prizes and giveaways. You'll also gain access to our weekly patron-only bonus cast called Gamers Week Uncut, Patrons with Benefits. Visit patreon.com/gamersweek or follow the link in the show notes to learn more.
Brian.
Oh my God, I was on mute and I was talking and then you interrupted me. And I was so scared. I went, oh! Couldn't have picked a worse sound. It felt like God was talking to me there. Oh God.
Was he
telling you to get your hands out of your pants?
I don't want to talk about that. All right, so why don't we go ahead and jump into our headlines for the week. Our headline segment is proudly sponsored by the Retro Game Club podcast. It's a fantastic, family-friendly retro gaming podcast. In each episode, Rob and Hugh pick 2 games to play and discuss, as well as news, interviews, and other topics. Right now, they want to know what other collections like Atari 50 would you like to see? Send your answers to email@retrogameclub.net or follow the link in the show notes. So personally, I would like them to come up with a collection of systems that I've never played before that weren't like readily available in the US. So like ZX Spectrum 50 or, an Amiga 50 or something like that. You know, those PC games that came out in the 80s, I think would be kind of a cool collection to see because I just have no exposure to them whatsoever.
Would you think that some of those collections, like for the Amiga, might be what's the word I'm looking for?
Crap.
No, well, that too, but also jumbled with stuff that we've already seen, games that we've already seen on
absolutely.
other 50. So really, what's the point?
Well, and the point of it, though, with the Atari 50 is it includes interviews, it includes art. It's not just the games. So that's maybe where my,
Right. And every collection needs a few of those hits, those fan favorites, so that people are interested.
I'd like to see a Sega CD 50.
Is there 50 games on the Sega CD?
Yes, there is.
Oh, okay. My bad.
Well, and also to clarify, the Atari 50 was 50 years, not 50 games.
Oh, my God. Oh, what? Are you kidding? No. Don't tell me that.
Changes everything.
Oh, Jesus. Why? Why, God? Oh, that did not go over well with me. Oh, well.
Personally, I think there should be a Mario Kart collection. And I know there's not a ton of Mario Kart games. There's only 8. But last year was the 30th anniversary of Super Mario Kart. So we've had 30 years of Mario Kart. And I would really like the older games ported forward so that you could play online with all of them, as opposed to just Super Mario Kart and Mario Kart 64, which are on the online collections.
What I like about Mario Kart in particular, though, even though they do new versions of it, is that they bring back the old tracks, so you still can play it online. But I think you're right. Playing it in the original graphics and everything like that would be really cool, especially Double Dash. Bring that back.
Yep, exactly. That's the thing is, even though a lot of Double Dash tracks have been brought forward to Mario Kart 8, you don't get to use the Double Dash mechanics.
Right.
So...
Yeah, and Mr. Blue has been trying to get me to play Mario Kart Double Dash for I don't know how long.
Mainly he wants to see you get frustrated and break your controller over it. But
so there's an ulterior motive.
A little bit. But yeah, Double Dash is good too.
From VGC, Microsoft layoffs confirmed to affect Bethesda and Xbox. Microsoft's mass layoffs have affected its video game divisions across both Xbox and Bethesda, it's been confirmed. On Wednesday, Microsoft confirmed plans to lay off approximately 4.5% of the U.S. technology giant's 220,000-person workforce, around 10,000 people. The cuts arrive 1 year to the day after Microsoft announced its intention to purchase Activision Blizzard for around $69 billion. According to Bloomberg, Bethesda Game Studios, as well as 343 Industries, the company behind 2021's Halo Infinite, were affected. In addition, Microsoft's HoloLens business and some engineering divisions are also reportedly part of the cuts. On Wednesday, Microsoft claimed the cuts were being made in response to macroeconomic conditions and changing customer priorities. Another report from Lords of Gaming claimed that 343 had suffered a significant number of layoffs across the company, which are allegedly heaviest towards individuals working on the single-player side of the studio. Journalist Jason Schreier corroborated this claim, stating that several employees had indicated it had been hit hard. Some former employees have already posted on social media to confirm they've been let go. Gaming is impacted by the layoffs, which likely includes people on my team, Gary Wallachek, principal engineer for Xbox Growth and Loyalty, tweeted on Wednesday before removing the message. Kevin Schmidt, a senior designer on Halo Infinite, also confirmed he'd been laid off, along with Jesse Stipek, 343's video producer, and Sam Langhot, who is a community manager for the Elder Scrolls Online.
I guess they got to come up with that $69 billion somewhere.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And maybe they were telling the truth when they said that Game Pass wasn't giving them the revenue that they expected.
Well, that would make sense for the changing customer priority.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And to hear that individuals working on the single player side of the studio of 343 were being let go, that's disappointing.
It is.
Like we've talked about before, I am so not into this online multiplayer thing that has become gaming. I'm always going to prefer the classic single player experience where you sit down and lose yourself in a game and get to forget about other people for a change, as opposed to having to go online and listen to a bunch of sweaty tryhards talking about each other's mothers. That's not for me.
It's a little for you, let's be honest.
Is it?
It's a great almost like people watching experience.
No, I hate those. Like YouTube streamers who put together compilations, like essentially a highlight reel of their worst interactions with other online players. I hate those.
Oh, I love them. I'm like popcorn.
I know everybody else.
Right,
I realize that I'm the odd person out. I realize that I have different tastes. But yeah, I can't stand that.
I'm with you, Blue. I don't see. It's very disappointing to hear that the single player side has been affected. I think it provides a nice balance when you can go in and play a multiplayer game if you choose to, if that's something you want to do, hang out with a few people. But then, like Blue said, it's nice to just escape into a world and play by yourself. Explore that world by yourself with your own character, not have to worry about communication with some other player or yada, 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 or any kind of strategy that you have to, become a hive mind and try to complete. It's nice just to be alone every once in a while and make that exploration.
Okay, boomers.
Not everything has to be a multiplayer cash grab. And that's what it seems like it's going towards.
Well,
now,
yeah.
The other thing that I wanted to touch on is did Bethesda or Xbox, do any of them recently start unions?
That's a good question.
That is a good question.
We talked about that a couple of episodes ago with and I think I made this prediction. They were going to allow the union to happen and then all of a sudden lay off everybody on that studio saying, sorry, yep, we're going to have to make some cuts. And I would not be surprised to learn that this is actually part of that.
I think, though, assuming VGZ has done their homework on this, it seems like if that was the case, they would have brought it up.
That's true.
Because that would be a juicy headline.
Mm-hmm.
Microsoft lays off union workers because they're jerks.
But also because these layoffs seem to be spread amongst all of Microsoft's divisions, I think.
Yep.
So I think it'd be a little bit tough to say, well, they're doing it because of the unions.
Right. And it's also, like you said, it's tough to just pinpoint that. But because they're doing it across all union or all divisions, they can certainly mask it. They can mask the fact that they've decided to get rid of the company or the division that's got a union and say, oh, well, sorry, it's just part of the layoffs. I mean, we're laying off a whole bunch of people in different departments. So it is what it is.
Microsoft's like, well, how can we get rid of these unions? I know. We'll do a 10,000 person layoff and then nobody will notice that in that 10,000, we got rid of the union.
Certainly hope these folks find a new home in another studio. PlayStation, of course, is purchasing a lot of stuff as well. And think about all the intel you could have about what's going on at Microsoft.
I wonder what kind of NDA they have you sign when you get there. Not that you couldn't share that stuff secretly or on the down low, but you'd have to be real careful.
I mean, if I'm going to sign an NDA like that, it'd be like, pay me to not say anything. And I'd be happy to.
I don't think that's how it works.
No, because they're like, if you say anything, you're going to pay us. So why do they need to pay you?
I mean, it could be a hush money payment, right?
They'll give you $2.50. There's your hush money.
Sweet. Hitting the vending machine.
I don't know. With inflation, will that buy you anything anymore?
Man, right? I could have gotten 4 tacos for that back in the day. Now, nope, not even that.
Sugar-free gum. Woo!
Sugar-free gum. Boo.
Gotta have all the sugar.
Next up from IGN, Ubisoft CEO apologizes to employees over ball in your court comments. Ubisoft is facing turbulent times financially and in-house, and CEO Yves Guillemot was forced to reckon with recent comments he made, shifting the blame to the staff. After canceling 3 unannounced games and delaying the release of Skull and Bones for a 6th time, Guillemot told employees the ball is in your court to help get the $3 billion company back on track. The changes at Ubisoft were scrapped up to major challenges in the industry, the underperformance of Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope and Just Dance 2023, and an upcoming restructuring for the publisher. I heard your feedback, and I'm sorry this was perceived that way, Guillemot said, according to sources present. When saying the ball is in your court to deliver our lineup on time and at the expected level of quality, I wanted to convey the idea that more than ever, I need your talent and energy to make it happen. This is a collective journey that starts, of course, with myself and with the leadership team to create the conditions for all of us to succeed together. Guillemot also remained vague about the potential for layoffs. It's not about doing more with less, but finding ways to do things differently across the company, Guillemot said. That's such a classic non-apology.
Sorry, not sorry.
I'm sorry this was perceived that way. I said what I said. It's your fault you didn't like it.
The ball is in your court to decide how you should feel this way.
Right.
Yeah.
You really didn't see that Mario plus Rabbids and Just Dance 2020-23? We're going to 2020-23? Really? 2020-23?
It's really in the future.
Yeah.
You didn't really see that those were going to underperform and not really be up to par with some of the great games that have come out, like God of War Ragnarok and tons of other games aside from these two. No, who's dancing? Who is dancing in 2023?
Well, that's a pretty niche game. I wonder what underperforming actually means for that. But I think the first Mario plus Rabbids video game was actually pretty popular.
Yeah, I'm surprised to see that it said that it was underperforming.
According to Nintendo Life, in August 2022, Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle has been played by over 10 million Switch users. So yeah, the first one did great.
Okay.
This idea, though, that you didn't think that utilizing the phrase "the ball is in your court" was going to backfire on you. I have a hard time believing that you didn't at least know that it was a passive-aggressive way to express yourself.
Oh, of course.
And the fact that it took feedback rather than him just immediately backpedaling that one, like, oh, by the way, I didn't mean it like that. Sorry. Tells you how out of touch this guy is.
Oh, yeah, super out of touch, considering he heads a company that is essentially known for controversy now.
Right.
Whether it's toxic management, sexual misconduct, sketchy microtransactions, all this kind of stuff. And so for him to say, well, if we're going to turn this company around, it's not up to us. It's not up to the culture that we've created at the company. It's not up to the working conditions that we've saddled you with. It's up to you guys. You guys are the ones who have ruined these games. That's why they're not out on time. That's why they're not up to the standards that we expect. The ball is in your court. Fix it so that I can continue to make billions upon billions of dollars.
Right. That's pretty much how it is.
Yeah, I don't think so, Yves. I'm not buying it.
I just imagine in any other situation whether that would be acceptable or not. I'm just thinking like the military. The general goes, well, guys, we're f***ing up. Balls in your court. Figure it out.
Like at a basketball team where they actually have the ball in their court. That might be the only time.
In that very specific scenario, absolutely.
Yep.
But, you know, it is his job to take ownership of the company's faults. Let's be honest. And if he wanted to motivate them to do more, putting all of the blame on them, pointing the finger at them and saying the reason that we're not successful is you and you not willing to step up and go above and beyond. Have you created an environment that would make me want to do that? Because let's be honest, if it's toxic, I have no reason whatsoever to want to come into work and do more. And I think, the office space piece is, so if I work a little bit harder to ship a couple more units, I don't see a dime.
I heard that in Peter's voice too.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
I don't see that being a good option for them to basically say, well, you guys are screwing the pooch here, so you fix it, and just like Blue said, make me more money. That's going to piss a lot of people off.
Right. I think that the mindset of the world in 2023 is far beyond the point in which people are willing to selflessly devote themselves to large companies, just for the cause, just for the good of the company, just to be a great team member. People are really over that kind of mindset. That might have worked, 30, 40 years ago. It does not fly now.
Right.
But 30, 40 years ago, you weren't a commodity in your role. You weren't something where as soon as a game is done, hey, you know what? We don't need you anymore. Have a great day.
Right.
Here's your pink
slip.
Yeah, basically ruin any relationship you have because you need to be in the office 23 hours a day just to be able to get this thing going. And, oh, by the way, yeah, you're fired.
And the problem I think you run into is that they're also extremely understaffed. Let's be honest. If you really wanted to get the game out on time, you would hire enough people to do that. And they don't want to do it. They want to create a situation where they're going to overwork people because they get an opportunity to pay them much less than you would if you had enough people. Which, let's be honest, at the end of the day, is affecting your bottom line. It's affecting the quality of the games. It's affecting the release date. So is it really an advantage because you're cutting costs for your staff, for crying out loud?
Well, yeah, it doesn't matter now if the game's not up to quality because you can just fix it after it releases.
Oh, yeah, just patch it.
Just patch it to death. Yeah, no problem.
Let's penalize people who want to play this game when we first launch it. Nah, no big deal.
Right. Those day one buyers who actually like your product enough to go buy it when it first launches. Sorry that your experience was really crappy. Don't worry, we'll fix it eventually.
Right.
All right, next up from Eurogamer. Shigeru Miyamoto said no to Wario-style Princess Peach. Mario creator Shigeru Miyamoto once vetoed a developer's idea to introduce an evil Wario version of Princess Peach. The concept for a Wario-style Peach was originally discussed 15 years ago by Shugo Takahashi, co-founder of Mario Tennis and Mario Golf, developed studio Camelot in an old interview with Nintendo Dream. Camelot's pitch to create an evil Peach came about after the studio's success in originating Waluigi, the evil version of Luigi who originally had his debut in Mario Tennis on the N64. Encouraged by the fact that Nintendo allowed Camelot to create Waluigi, Takahashi next pitched Walu Peach. That's a terrible name.
Would you prefer Weech?
Yes, I would prefer Weech.
Weech.
Just rolls off the tongue. For the studio's next project, only for Miyamoto to refuse the idea before seeing Camelot's design. Reportedly, Miyamoto said that he didn't need to see Walu Peach's design as it would be just like Doronjo, so don't bother. Referencing a character from Yatterman's anime series, Takahashi lamented that his design actually did not look like that, but had a Tenchi style suggestive of a fallen angel or demon. Alas, that was that. Could we still see a Walu Peach? It seems unlikely. Not that it stopped fans. Remember Bowsette? And I was just thinking of Bowsette the entire time I'm reading this. I was like,
I had never heard of or seen Bowsette up until now. I just Googled
Seriously?
it.
Oh my God, are you kidding me? That was like every cosplay for 6 months. Was
Yeah, that was
Bowsette.
every fan fiction. Like every artist on Twitter did a version of Bowsette. How did you miss out on all that?
I don't know. I wasn't paying attention. It was Mario. So
He's like, it's Mario, tune out.
right, pretty much. But I gotta say, if you take Bowsette, if you take the shell and the tail and the horns away, that's pretty much what I kind of thought that Walu Peach would look like.
I'm envisioning like a dominatrix style, you know? She's got like a whip, high heels, right? It's like patent leather, the whole thing.
Keep going.
I mean, this Doronjo kind of looks like that.
And I'm fine with that. I'm completely okay with it.
He likes the dominatrix look.
Right. As a kid, you had a little bit of a crush on Peach, and now it's time for the more, how would I put it, adult version of Peach. I'm okay with this. I get it though. Like Peach it's just so wholesome, right? You know.
But Peach is always running off to another castle.
It's true. So maybe this Peach is or Walu Peach is a homebody. She never leaves.
I thought you were getting ready to say.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say something else. She's a homebody. Yeah, maybe Walu Peach sits around and like sweats all day and
keep talking.
Right, she just watches Real Housewives of Mushroom Kingdom all day.
The Real Housewives of Mushroom Kingdom.
She's smoking packs of Virginia Slims.
Right. Drinking a Diet Coke.
Oh man, this really needs to be a thing. I hope they do the same treatment they did to Bowsette.
Well, yeah, when all the fan art comes out of Walu Peach, probably none of them are going to have our version.
I've got some other ideas, but I cannot mention them on this episode. We might talk more about that on the uncut episode.
Bring it.
We'll revisit this topic.
Right. From Nintendo Life, Pet Fish reveals credit card details during Pokemon Violet livestream. One famous fish has accidentally revealed its owner's credit card details during a Pokemon Violet livestream. Mutikimaro Channel is a Japanese YouTuber whose most well-known livestream series is called Fish Play Pokemon. On these streams, you guessed it, some pet fish actually manage to play through entire Pokemon games. The channel has played through Pokemon Crystal, Leaf Green, and Sapphire, among many others. But how do they play? Mutikimaro has created a program and circuit board that uses motion tracking. The board has a sheet of paper and various button inputs on it, and it's placed behind the fish tank. When the fish swims by the button, the circuit board picks up the motion and inputs the relevant movement. On January 15th, while playing Pokemon Violet on stream, the game crashed, and the fish found themselves going into the Switch's menu and then the eShop. Once on the eShop, the fish managed to browse a few games such as Minecraft and Minecraft Legends, but not before popping into the wallet page and adding 500 yen to Mutikimaru's account, which is where the credit card details were shown. The fish weren't quite done there, though. As a last hurrah, they created a brand new icon for Mutikimara using platinum points via the reward system. The icon? A simple little Nintendo Switch Sports golf character.
Talk about your all-time backfire.
Yeah, the moral of the story is always supervise your fish when they're browsing the eShop.
Keep the fish on a short leash.
Thank God it was on a Switch and not on a PC where all of a sudden their browser history came up.
Yeah.
Oh, oops.
Man, you're really into fish porn.
You have to think about all the possibilities of what can happen, people, before you do stuff like this. Yeah, you might think it's a great idea to create this little circuit board that, oh, you know what? I get to let my fish play Pokemon. Did you ever think that the fish could take over the world? No, you didn't.
Take over the world. 2 points, I guess. One, most sites, when you have your credit card information saved, they have it like all X'd out. And then we'll only do the last couple of digits. So I'm a little bit surprised that the eShop doesn't do that.
Had his entire credit card in there.
Yep. The other thing is that, what does that really say about the Pokemon games when fish can just randomly do inputs and still manage to play through the games?
What does it say about me where I don't win Pokemon, but a fish does?
I think you'll need to do some soul searching on that.
That stupid goldfish. I love this idea. I think it's super cute, falls along with the line of what Pokemon is, but just supervise your fish. Turn it off.
How interesting could it really be to sit there and watch your fish play through Pokemon? I mean, obviously this is a popular channel and lots of people do it, but I mean, I couldn't blame him if he decided, you know what, I'm going to go make a sandwich real fast.
Right.
Been eating hot wings the night before. I'm about to blow up this toilet.
Right.
You guys take over for a little bit.
Yep.
All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at our top 3 new releases for the week.
All right, first up is A Space for the Unbound, and that's out on PS5, Xbox Series X and S, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. Follow 2 high school sweethearts on a journey of self-discovery at the end of their high school years. When a mysteriously supernatural power is suddenly unleashed, threatening their existence, they must explore and investigate their town to uncover hidden secrets, face the end of the world, and perhaps learn more about each other. Next up is Gigantosaurus Dino Kart. Out on PS5, Xbox Series X and S, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. Race around Cretaceous, I guess, in a I guess prehistoric kart championship for up to 4 players of all ages, where you can play as your favorite dino friends and even bump into the mysterious Gigantosaurus himself. This racing adventure is full of awesome obstacles and power-ups found only in the world of dinosaurs. Outrun dangers like hot lava eruptions from Mount Oblivion, or feel the power of the famous Gigantosaurus roar. Charge through the pack by picking up special skills that give you a shortcut, a jetpack powered boost, or a way to knock out your rivals. And finally, Fire Emblem Engage is out on the Switch. In a war against the Fell Dragon, 4 kingdoms work together with heroes from other worlds to seal away this great evil. As a divine dragon, use rich strategies and robust customization to meet your destiny to collect 12 emblem rings and bring peace back to the continent of Elios. So, looking at these 3 games, what are you in for, Donnie?
I have to be honest. It looks like a big fat 0. Space for Unbound. I've seen some of the screenshots. Nope, does not look for me. The content does not look for me. Gigantosaurus Dino Kart. Maybe I could give that one a try, but look, I mean, there's only one tried and true kart, and that's Mario Kart. So I'm sticking with that one. I could possibly give this one a try depending on, how the gameplay is, if the maps are big enough, if they're crazy and wacky. Fire Emblem, I've never played a Fire Emblem game in my life. I don't really plan on starting now. But, there's maybe if I had to, I could pick this one up. But in all honesty, none of them.
All right. What about you, Ryan?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as far as Space for Unbound. That doesn't spark joy for me. Gigantosaurus Dino Kart. I've been burned by so many alt kart games, if you will. Mm-hmm. Unless I hear that it's amazing, I'm probably not going to jump to get this one. But Fire Emblem Engage, I've wanted to get into the Fire Emblem series for a while, so this will probably be my first entry into that. People are really excited about it, so hopefully we can see what it's all about. Give it a shot.
Well, I'm with you guys on Space for the Unbound. It's kind of like a slice of life thing, which is not really a genre that attracts me. Gigantosaurus Dino Kart. I watched the trailer and oh my God, it looks dumb.
Hot mess.
Well, I mean, it looks cheap and it looks like it was made, I think, for 5-year-olds, especially with the way the narrator was describing it and the character voices. Just oof.
5-year-olds, you say?
Yeah.
That'll fit me perfectly.
Oh, well, there you go, Ryan.
You're talking about from a maturity standpoint, right?
Sure. Fire Emblem Engage. I too have never played a Fire Emblem game. I'm open to getting into the series, so I guess by process of elimination, that would be the one that I would choose of these 3.
Wasn't there already a Fire Emblem game on the Switch?
Yeah, there's been several.
Okay.
It's a huge series.
It kind of dilutes them. If you're just continuing to pump them out continuously, then
Call of Duty. Excuse me.
You shut your mouth.
All right, so why don't we go ahead and announce our giveaway for the week. So for January, we'll be giving away a brand new copy of Fire Emblem Engage for the Nintendo Switch. To enter the giveaway, look for @RetroGameBrews pin tweet on Friday morning, January 20th. Give our Twitter account @GamersWeekPC a follow and retweet for 1 entry. If you want 2 more entries, comment with a picture of a screenshot of you listening to episode 56 with a possible total of 3 entries. Entries will be accepted from Friday, January 20th to Tuesday, January 24th. You're already listening to the episode, so you might as well enter now before you forget. And to let you know, on our last giveaway, 2 out of the 3 people got 3 entries. So yeah. Up your odds, people. It's going to be good. All right, so why don't we go ahead and jump into our main topic for this week? Today, Google Stadia officially closed down. So before we move on, let's observe a moment of silence for Stadia.
See you at the crossroads.
Said silence.
See, I know I didn't even have to script anything. I just say moment of silence and one of you guys would fill it.
Donnie's always going to fill in.
Yep.
All right, from Sky News, game over for Google Stadia. But will it take cloud gaming with it? Google Stadia, the tech giant's ill-fated venture into the video game industry, is taking its final breaths after little more than 3 years. Launched in November 2019 with the goal of making a major dent in a space long dominated by Microsoft's Xbox, Sony's PlayStation, and Nintendo, executives appeared convinced that players would be quick to ditch their traditional consoles and take their hobby into the cloud. But while the likes of Netflix, Amazon, Disney have seen us embrace streaming en masse for films and TV, Google's hopes of gamers doing the same never look close to coming to fruition. Reports suggest an internal target of 1 million monthly active users, Netflix has 223 million, wasn't reached, with 2020 numbers peaking at around 750,000. For a company the size of Google, that was never going to be enough, and the service's closure was confirmed last year. While Google did attract blockbuster franchises like Assassin's Creed, Doom, and FIFA in its first years, none enjoyed close to the same success they're used to on traditional consoles. Gamers are a notoriously tribal bunch, and something quite extraordinary needs to happen for them to abandon their brand loyalty that they have for their platform of choice. While Stadia never built a big library of enticing exclusives, those that did make the service, their only home will vanish from existence. Raising concerns about games preservation, its closure will be marked with a final release, Worm Game, which Google used internally to test features. But never mind the games, Stadia had other problems.
Streaming giants in the film and TV space went global by taking advantage of the technology to make themselves accessible just about anywhere, with a business model to match. Thousands and thousands of things to watch, anywhere and everywhere, for one monthly fee. Stadia may have been available on everything from smart TVs to smartphones, but its pricing strategy, certainly during its first 18 months of release, never looked massively enticing. Its Pro subscription tier, which was required to stream games in the best possible quality, offered a relatively paltry selection of titles, far removed from the vast libraries that have kept people hooked elsewhere. For everything else on the service, including aforementioned heavy hitters like FIFA and Assassin's Creed, players needed to cough up the same full price demanded on other platforms. This was a tough sell, as Stadia's versions of popular games were usually deemed inferior to their console cousins, although Google has been offering refunds as part of its Make Good Farewell tour.
Without a doubt, the most existential question that faced Stadia was whether game streaming was viable. Moments where your Amazon film briefly drops in picture quality or needs to buffer are annoying, sure, but nothing compared to the impact a dodgy connection can have on a game. While an Xbox or PlayStation has your controller connected straight to the console via a cable or Bluetooth, a Stadia controller is commanding a game that's being played on a remote server hundreds or thousands of miles away. And any latency at all between the press of a button and the action on screen can be fatal. Even Netflix knows this. It is dipping its toe into gaming, but offers a selection for download rather than streaming. Stadia need not be the death knell for cloud gaming, perhaps more a case of trying to run before it could walk. Until super fast internet speeds go truly mainstream, it's hard to envisage cloud gaming doing so either. But industry leaders Sony, Nintendo, and Microsoft all offer game streaming to varying degrees. They've not made the fatal mistake of basing their entire platform around it, but it's a growing priority. Xbox Game Pass, the closest the industry has to a Netflix for games, is increasingly offering its vast catalog for streaming on phones and tablets rather than just download on a console, and has north of 25 million subscribers. It might be game over for Google Stadia, but don't count the cloud out just yet.
Now, I know that we have not always been, how would I put it, positive on Google Stadia.
That's one way to put it.
Yeah, I'm trying to be nice about it. From the beginning, I think the idea behind it was ambitious. It was almost, in a way, a bit fun. The idea that you could get a box that will allow you access to a lot of different games. But knowing Google being a steward of their products is rare for them to see something more than a couple years through. Maybe it was doomed from the beginning, and I think a lot of people express that. The one thing that, for me, the positive of Google Stadia being in the marketplace is that it kind of gave a nudge to the Sonys, the Microsofts, the Nintendos to start looking at cloud gaming as being a more viable option. Prior to that, there was some streaming services out there, but there was never anything that was having the kind of capital that was being pumped into it that Google could offer. So in a way, it provided people with what Xbox Game Pass is now. Without Stadia, I don't know if that would have been a priority for Microsoft. Now, granted, I don't work at Microsoft, so I don't know if they were thinking about this long before Stadia came out. But the point being is that one of the the best parts about this is that the transition from Google Stadia, if you were an adopter, you're an early person who got in on the ground floor, and you still like this idea of streaming games, you're not up you-know-what creek without a paddle. You can pick up an Xbox or do it from your PC, sign up for Xbox Game Pass, and not have to pay full price for games. You get to pay $10 a month, which is extremely reasonable, and you get basically what you wanted out of Stadia. So when Stadia pushed them in the right direction, they also got kind of outplayed by Microsoft and Sony.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's imagine an alternate universe where Stadia was not run by Google.
Yeah.
Let's imagine it was run by a company that actually kind of knew the mindset of games, who understood that you can't sell 6-month-old games for full price, who understood that if you're not actually going to allow the people to own the games, you know, you need to offer a different sort of price structure than just the same as if they were buying it off a shelf. Because if the Xbox install base is about 64 million systems, like we talked about a few weeks ago, the world population is nearly 8 billion at this point. Not everybody's going to be a gamer, but that's a hell of a lot of people who could possibly get into gaming for a lot cheaper than the cost of buying an Xbox, because all you need is a controller.
Right.
You didn't even need a Stadia controller, though they offer them. You just needed any controller at all. So it wasn't a bad idea, but Google was their own worst enemy.
Right.
Is it too much to say that maybe the service gets picked up by somebody else? The assets get picked up by somebody else other than Google? Like Google sells it off, or do they just leave it completely dead and buried?
Based off of their past, I would probably say dead and buried is more a Google move.
Yeah, I think they're probably far more worried about proprietary stuff than they are recouping any sort of loss.
Right.
But somebody like Amazon could definitively have the same idea.
Don't they have Luna? Isn't that a cloud gaming service? Every time I sign into Amazon Prime on my TV, it's like, hey, don't you want to play Luna? I'm like, not really.
No.
Okay, play select games for free on devices you already own. Since I'm already a Prime member, if I get that feature free, then that's leaps and bounds than what Google Stadia is trying to do with, I mean, like you guys said, full price for a game that's been out for 6 months. The only company that I know that does that is Nintendo.
But it's not like Nintendo's trying to sell you games that you can go pick up for $10 on a sale somewhere else.
Absolutely. Correct.
That's the only reason they get away with it.
Mm-hmm.
So let's jump 10, 20 years in the future when super fast internet speed is hopefully commonplace by then. Everybody has it. Is there a place for Stadia then?
Yes, I think there is. I think we've talked about this in the past where streaming and cloud gaming will be the future, whether we like it or not, because of the lack of need for a big device that sits in your house having to pay $600 as an entry fee in order to play these games. Microsoft is already kind of doing that with making it accessible to PC gamers, but of course with a PC, the barrier to entry is a couple $1,000s. So it's almost like, well, I was planning on making a PC anyway, so sure, I can use that Game Pass on Windows. But eventually, yes, I think that the whole dongle thing, they'll figure that out in the next 20 next 20 to 30 years, and you will have basically the Steam library at your fingertips, and whoever is a better company when it comes to launching that will more than likely take over the marketplace. And the console wars, I'm going to call it right now, the console wars will not be between three. It'll be between one or two companies.
Oh. Who do you think? Or is it going to be two completely new companies, or is it going to be Microsoft and somebody else? I mean, who's fallen out?
So my guess is Nintendo's probably going to fall out. I know.
Hot take.
Sony will likely fall out too, because I think both of them struggle from the ability to be flexible. They're very kind of stuck in their ways. Microsoft might be around, but I think maybe one of those tech giants like Amazon, because they own everything. Maybe even the Chinese company Alibaba might get into it. So who knows?
I think where it goes from here is if you actually get rid of a console, right, then you might have the big three teaming up with one of the three cloud services, right? So Sony will team up with Amazon AWS. Microsoft will team up with Microsoft has their own. What am I talking about? Microsoft has their own things. They have Azure. So Microsoft could like, okay, we're now focusing all of our stuff in our own cloud provider environment. And here you go, where Nintendo and Sony would have to team up with either AWS or Google in order to bring that content to their people. So I think Microsoft might be on the forefront of this since they provide their own cloud environment.
Indeed. And one of the things I will point out, too, is that I hate this. I really hate this.
Well, then what I have to say will make you feel better because Nintendo has never been a company that's played by the rules of anything else that's going on. So even if everybody else goes to cloud streaming in dongles, nothing.
Dongle. Sorry.
Jeez.
I was muted. I apologize.
You have one job. Even if everybody else goes to cloud streaming in dongles, I don't see Nintendo feeling like they need to do that. I don't see Nintendo ever wanting to use anyone else's network. I think Nintendo keeps on keeping on with the consoles that they know until perhaps the technology for cloud streaming is so commonplace, it's so old and boring, and everybody knows how to do it. Then they create their own cloud network and do it that way. But until they can get to that point where they can comfortably manage their own cloud streaming service, they're not going to give up on consoles.
It's almost like Nintendo is the Apple of the gaming industry, where they're not going to innovate anything. They're just going to wait for everybody else to do it. And then when they come out with, they're like, oh my God, you can totally wirelessly charge this thing. It's so great. And everyone who has an Android is like, yeah, for the last 4 years. Oh my God, we got a 400 billion megapixel camera. So do we.
Yeah. And then they'll just charge twice as much. And
of course.
Yep.
Of course.
But it's Nintendo, so that's what you're paying for.
Right.
Personally, I would imagine that eventually Nintendo will just get out of the console market and go into continuing to make their style of games and flourish in that sense. Do a lot better at that transition than Sega did and just be fine.
That was a shot across the bow.
Boom. At the end of the day, it's the future. It sucks. It's going to happen. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that we are dinosaurs. We are dinosaurs, and I am the biggest of all of us. So I am a Gigantosaurus in this one.
You might as well play Gigantosaurus Dino Kart then.
Boom. Hey, that's me. It's going to be like the Leonardo DiCaprio. I'm going to point.
I'm excited for what VR can really do for us. If we get an environment that looks kind of like the Oasis did in Ready Player One, it allows us different options of going to different places, different worlds, different environments and stuff like that, then yes, then I'm excited for gaming. But where it's heading now, where I'm paying a service every month to be able to have access to the games, which I have stated before. I kind of like it because in the grand scheme of things, with the prices the way they are now, it makes sense. It makes more sense for somebody who's strapped for cash to spend $9 a month to be able to have access to all of these games and not be like, okay, well, I'm dropping $70 for this game, $70 for that game. Why are you laughing?
I'm sorry. Because I went grocery shopping today and I was thinking that, well, yeah, for $9, you can get a month worth of Game Pass or you can get a dozen eggs. Which would you rather have?
In a way, I like it, but then again, I don't because I'm an old school gamer. We grew up with the fact that you could just pop in a game and play it and not have to wait hours upon hours for installation and then wait hours upon hours for updates. There are still people out there who don't have high quality internet. So you expect them to be on the level playing field with newer consoles, newer games, high speed internet connections, multiplayer only. The fact that you're removing single player only divisions from your video game companies and focusing on multiplayer, it's going to kill the industry. I say that lightly. It's not going to kill the industry, but it's going to take the opportunity away from so many different people to play video games.
Mm-hmm.
I, too, am an old school dinosaur gamer, but you know what I have found myself doing the last week or two?
Knitting?
No.
Collecting your farts in a jar.
I'm going to sell those. That's a side hustle. Don't worry about that.
Oh, God, I got to take the headphones off.
No, the last week or two when I've been jumping back and forth between Breath of the Wild and Mario Kart 8, both of which I have on physical cartridges.
Mm-hmm.
Each time when I go to play one of the games and realize it's not the one that's in the Switch, and I have to get up and walk the 3 steps to the TV and physically change the cartridge every single time, I'm like, I just sat down. So I have become lazy and spoiled, and changing the cartridges is a major hassle now.
Well, technically they're discs.
Not on Switch. They're still cards.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Hashtag first world problems.
Right. Just a little bit. Just a little bit.
And I remind you as well that you do CrossFit.
Honestly, that's what makes it worse. The next day after it's squat day, you think I want to get up again once I sat down? Oh, hell no. I live in that couch now.
Just got to work on your telekinesis and then you'll be good.
Right.
This is a throwback to when we were the actual remote controls for our parents.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
With the old school television, it's like, hey, get up and turn the channel. And you're like, oh, okay. Click. I don't want to watch that. Get up and turn the channel again. You're like, son of a...
Make up your mind, damn it.
What'd you say?
I mean, yeah, sure.
I mean, yes, Dad.
So before we move on, let's take a quick break to talk about our sponsor. This segment is proudly sponsored by the Elitist Podcast. It's a show where 3 friends, occasional guests, play games about video games, including trivia, game show games, and more. Here is this week's trivia question. Everyone's a critic, especially Bill Kunkel, a.k.a. the Game Doctor. Long before he served as the executive editor of EGM in the 2000s, he was one of the pioneer American video game journalists and got his start in 1979 as a writer for the Arcade Alley, a video game column in What magazine. Tune in to the Elitist Podcast this Wednesday to hear the answer. You can find the Elitist on your favorite podcast platform. We also have their links in the show notes.
So in the 70s, you said?
Yep, 1979.
1979. So that was when the mainstream was afraid of arcades.
Right. It was it's the seedy arcade.
So I'd like to say something like redacted, but they probably wouldn't want to be associated with something like that.
Probably not.
Probably not. You're right.
Probably some niche or unique swank sounding magazine like
redacted.
You're closer than you think, but it's
okay.
Redacted.
Ooh.
Really?
Yeah. And by the way, Tim sent this to me and then put, I'm not telling you the answer, like laughing tongue out face. And I actually looked it up, Tim. So ha 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 on you.
It just means Ryan's a cheater. That's all.
I am a cheater. And that's okay. All right, thank you for coming, students. Please take your seats and welcome back to Professor Ryebread's Gaming History 101. And in today's lesson, we'll be discussing and remembering the life of one of the godfathers of gaming in the UK that allowed gamers to connect with his extremely popular Crash and Zap 64 magazines. We'll be discussing the early history of Newsfield Publishing and their leader, Roger Kean. Now, whether you ask a gamer about their experiences gaming in the early to mid 80s in the US, the talk is dominated by the Atari 2600 and the Nintendo Entertainment System. However, across the pond, gaming was very different. While Atari did a good job marketing and selling to Europe, Nintendo wasn't really sold on the region, which left a large gap for gamers. In the UK in particular, the gaming space saw an explosion of relatively affordable computer-based gaming systems. Most notably, the ZX, that's right, I said ZX Spectrum.
But you don't want to be shot, so.
Right, exactly. Which was made by Sinclair. What made the Spectrum, or Specky, as it's often known, so popular was the large library of games and the inexpensive price point, about 125 British pounds at launch. But the popularity of the system may have never reached its full potential if it weren't for Robert Kean and the Frey brothers starting their own magazine dedicated to the system. Now, Kean and Frey brothers started their career in publishing in 1982, working for a newspaper publisher by the name of Alan Purnell, where they got a chance to learn the ropes of the publishing industry and the technology behind it. Now, prior to joining this venture, Frankel Frey was working with an electronics company, and one of his friends out of Germany was constantly asking him how to get his hands on certain computer games. Now, there wasn't necessarily a regular market that people could go to, even in the UK, without traveling great distances, or if you just so happen to be one of the millions of people who lived in London at the time. But the trio were really big gamers and knew connections of where to get their hands on the games via the mail. Now, seeing this as a viable business venture, they decided to create their own mail order catalog called Crash Micro Games Action. It's like they just took a jumble and all right, what are cool words we can use? Crash, action, micro. You got to have games in there somewhere. Okay, yeah, we'll go with games. And they advertised it in established magazines like Computer and Video Games, and the concept was a smash hit almost immediately, and they knew that they had tapped into a unique market. What's interesting about this company, though, is that they started basically in rural England, where at the time, if you were going to start a electronics-based company or something that had to do with electronics, the expectation is that you were out of London, right? A big, major metropolitan city. But these guys were kind of in the sticks with this company, which actually kind of helped them later on as to how they were able to write their articles and where they were getting their reviewers from. But in 1983, the ZX Spectrum focused Crash magazine and Newsfield Publishing was born. So what they saw is that the success of Crash Micro Games Action, and actually had that reached the desk of quite a few publishers at the time, and they had recommended that, hey, you know what? And I think Roger put it, and I'm paraphrasing here. Oh, you've been successful enough to lose all of your own money. So at the time, Kean wasn't exactly a spring chicken, and he was aware that he didn't really have the perspective to appeal to the magazine's target audiences, which were teenagers and young men. So, in order to have a better perspective, Kean hired a local teenager as a writer and recruited teams from around the neighborhood to play the games and review them. In fact, the kid that showed up, and I forgot his name, I should have put it in the article, but the reason that he became a writer there is that he saw one of the Crash Micro Games action and saw that where it was located and realized it was in the same town. So he just walked down to the office, knocked on the door and said, "Hey, I'd like to write for you." And they said, "Come on in." So,
don't you were that easy,
right? You know? So in order to review the games, one of the things that they did is they took screenshots of the game, kind of the old school way. I think we all did this at one point where you would just put the camera directly behind the monitor. And, since they were a publisher, they could actually develop it in-house to see if there was any glare, which is expected, I think, through that method. But it allowed them the ability to create decent photos for these games that weren't based off of what the publishers were sending them. So while Kean was basically the main writer and editor for most of the articles in the magazine, he used direct quotes from the young reviewers, even including pictures of their faces in the articles themselves. Now, this is what makes them unique. They weren't afraid to be critical of a game. Even though advertisers looked to pressure them into giving a positive review, they decided that they wanted to be truthful, that they wanted to have some integrity. So they rated the games as how they felt the games stacked up, even rating a game as low as 9% for that game.
Oof.
Yeah, there's stories of games going into production, releasing with this group, and the kids said they hated it, and the project basically being abandoned. So they had that much power over, ZX Spectrum games, which is crazy if you think about that.
Wow.
I'm like, 13 years old and I'm going to decide whether a game is going to go to market or not. You know?
I have the power.
And there's a story where one of the executives from Imagine had one of his games reviewed through the magazine, and it was abysmal. They gave it terrible scores. And so he called up Kean and was just giving him the riot act. You know, like, how dare you, you know, blah, 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 blah. And then he ended it by saying, we'll never advertise with Crash Magazine again. And Roger had to bring up to him and say, you've never advertised with us before. Whoops. But it was that level of almost like abuse that they were going through because they were a review magazine that was actually fairly popular. Now, the first issue of Crash, though, published in February of 1984 and saw basically instant success from the stellar writing of Kean and the beautiful artwork of Oliver Frey, which also is another thing that made it unique, is that they weren't your typical kind of stuffy trade magazine. They were trying to appeal to younger gamers. And with Oliver's artwork, that was something that caught your eye right on the newsstand. And, his renditions of games, because often the cover art would have to do with a game that was being reviewed. He would basically, because as I understood, he didn't really play the games. So he would go off of just how people described it or what the teenagers had to say, and then made his own concepts. Often they were hyper realistic, occasionally violent and gory. But that really, really, I think, is what made the difference between what everyone else was doing and what Crash was doing at the time. So, as we kind of alluded to before, though, their willingness to provide honest reviews of the game made them also credible amongst gamers in the UK. So that was also another drawing point. They knew what they were going to read was the truth, more or less. And at the time of the release, there was actually competitor magazines as well. So when Crash came out, almost at basically the same time, a few other magazines popped up that were strictly focused on the Sinclair ZX Spectrum. I think the two other magazines were called Your Sinclair, which I think was actually developed by Sinclair, and then another third-party magazine called Sinclair User. Both really stellar names for magazines.
Yeah, but then very confusing because it's got the same name. So if you're like, oh, just check out the one with Sinclair. And of course, they're like, well,
right.
There's so many different ones to choose from.
Right. Which one are you talking about? The one that starts with your or the one that ends with user? Now, interestingly enough, though, this led to some tension between publishers, in particular over the idea of the magazine using teenagers to review the games. And in particular, Sinclair User made it obvious that they were not fond of Crash. So Kean and crew decided to give Sinclair User the metaphorical middle finger by putting out a parody cover called Unclear User.
Oh,
yeah, that directly lampooned Sinclair User's most recent issue by over cartoonizing their art and making fun of their claims of exclusivity and the likelihood to kowtow to their advertisers. Imagine if somebody did that today.
There'd be lawsuits upon lawsuits upon lawsuits.
Well, they didn't escape that because Kean and crew were basically promptly sued for it. And they had to recall their the unsold versions of it. But at the time, they were a magazine that, as soon as it hit shelves, I think it hit shelves on Thursday. It was like Thursday, Friday, Saturday were their biggest selling days. And so as I recall, I think over 60% of the expected run for that was already purchased. Now, the interesting part of this whole ordeal, though, was because they had to recall it and the news got out about that. It actually kind of had the opposite effect that Sinclair User was looking for. Because within a few months, Crash went from selling 60,000 copies a month to selling over 100,000. Oh. And basically crowned them as the bad boys of specky magazines, if you will. And the kids loved them. The teenagers loved their attitude that was in it and the fact that they weren't willing to bow down to advertisers and all those things, but also to give a little middle finger to the competition. Now, around that time, a rivalry had been brewing in the UK gaming space with the emergence of the Commodore 64 as a direct competitor to the ZX Spectrum. And seeing the opportunity to kind of capture the hype around this computer gaming war, Kean and crew at Newsfield began to publish a magazine called Zap 64 dedicated to the Commodore. And Kean actually purposely had the magazines play against each other to fuel the rivalry and increase the hype behind both publications. And it worked.
Scandalous.
Right. Very scandalous. And really, the interesting part, too, is that he moved from being an editor of Crash to being an editor of Zap. And that was like a huge betrayal, right? God forbid. And the funny part, though, is that didn't affect the sales of Crash. They're like, well, we're still going to buy the magazine, though. We're just upset that you went over to Zap. But that also fueled some people to buy Zap because they, of course, wanted to show their loyalty for their particular console. It's like, we've never heard of that before, right?
No.
Right.
Now, as the 80s went on, there was a problem with Newsfield's business model. Having a magazine that was dedicated to one system meant that as new systems came out, you'd have to either make new publications or watch the old magazine disappear into obscurity as the system became less and less relevant. So Kean and team had attempted to make other magazines outside the gaming culture as well, but never really saw the success of Crash or Zap 64. So, they kind of almost put themselves out of their own marketplace because they were just so successful. And then how do you follow that up with another magazine? Obviously, you would like to say, okay, well, somebody who owns a ZX Spectrum is probably going to buy this system, but you never know. So that meant that as time went on, they would eventually have to liquidate their assets. And they did so in 1991. Now, the irony, though, of this is that they closed shop in 1991, but there were still fans of the magazine in the early 1980s. And that was the birth, essentially, of the internet age. And so gamers eventually began to make fan sites for the magazine, making the publications widely available across the web. The real ironic part about that, though, is that the thing that killed most physical magazines in the late 1990s helped Crash and Zap 64 live on. The sad part of the story, though, is that Roger recently passed away due to a neurological condition on the 3rd of January of 2023. But his contributions to the enjoyment of UK gamers was enormous and likely led to a myriad of lifelong gaming enthusiasts.
Hear, hear.
Yeah, for sure. So to kind of wrap things up, Roger's willingness to provide truthful gaming reviews blazed a trail in the space that helped influence years later crowdsourced review sites for games. Overall, Roger will certainly be fondly remembered and missed. So thank you all for attending today's lesson. And just a reminder, if you have ideas for a story and you'd like to hear, send us a message at gamersweekpodcast@gmail.com and we might feature your suggestion. All right, so that about does it for us. So thank you for listening to this episode, number 56 of Gamers Week Podcast. And a big thank you to Retro Game Club Podcast, the Elitist Podcast, and Love Retro BTW for sponsoring this episode. Don't forget to check out their links in the show notes. If you want to connect with Gamers Week, follow us on Twitter at GamersWeekPC. Email us at gamersweekpodcast@gmail.com. Visit our merch store at gamers-week-podcast.creator-spring.com, or if you want to do it the easy way, follow the link in the show notes. And join us on Patreon at patreon.com/gamersweek. Finally, since you made it all the way to the end of the episode, please leave us a rating and a review to let us know how we did. We really do value your feedback. And while you're there, consider subscribing on iTunes, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice.
Dongle hats, t-shirts, and fanny packs incoming.
On the merch store, the Gamers Week merch store.
Yes, on the merch store.
What he means.
I'm sorry, it's the Moich store.
Sorry, the Moich store. We should change the title of the store, the storefront. They call it the Moich store.
The Moich store. How do you spell Moich?
M-O-I?
RCH? Moich? Or it's just M-O-I-C-H?
Or is it M-O-I-Y-C-H? Moich?
I think we need to workshop this, but we're going to come up with it.
Yeah.
Visit our merch store at moich.creator-spring.com.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, friends.
Oh yeah, baby.
Welcome to Gamers Week Uncut.
Welcome to Gamers Week Uncut.
Welcome to Gamers Week Uncut, Patrons with Benefits. This is the unscripted, patron-only bonus cast with less editing and more dirty jokes. We don't know where the conversation will go, but we're sure it will be weird.
This fish just went right on my nipple. And I'm just like,
I Google Street Fighter 6. The first search result that comes up is people think they can see Ryu's in the Street Fighter 6 reveal.
Listen up here, kids. You're not going to want to get one of those VD-STDs things, right? Make it fall off. When you go, grab a pro. You'll be doing it for America.
That was perfect.
If you want to hear weekly episodes of our patron-only bonus cast, join us at patreon.com/gamersweek.